Hi there, everyone. It's 4 o'clock in New York as the twin crises stemming from the coronavirus pandemic collide. The staggering loss of life overwhelming the healthcare system and the mounting economic pain devastating families all across this country. All of it laid bare in sobering new statistics out just this morning. More than 2,800 American deaths due to the coronavirus were recorded yesterday. It's a record shattering the previous day's record, with no end to all this record-breaking in sight. Hospitalizations also reaching a new high, soaring above the levels that almost broke our nation's healthcare system in both April and again in July. And on the economic front, the New York Times offers this assessment of today's jobs report. Quote, the American economic recovery continues to slow, stranding millions who have yet to find a new job after being thrown out of the workforce by the coronavirus pandemic. And to be clear, didn't have to be this way. The experts at Donald Trump's disposal warned him how important it would be to flatten the coronavirus curve in the spring and summer to prevent just this, the out-of-control surge we're experiencing right now. That approach also might have given the flash-frozen economy a chance to thaw out. Here's Dr. Anthony Fauci, for example, this past spring.
If states or cities or regions, in their attempt, understandable, to get back to some form of normality, disregard to a greater or lesser degree the checkpoints that we put in our guidelines about when it is safe to proceed in pulling back on mitigation. Because I feel if that occurs, there is a real risk that you will trigger an outbreak that you may not be able to control, which in fact, paradoxically, will set you back, not only leading to some suffering and death that could be avoided, but could even set you back on the road to trying to get economic recovery.
That prediction came in May. But the President of the United States found that incontrovertible science inconvenient for the false reassurance and strategic downplaying of the pandemic that he engaged in an effort to help him stagger to re-election. And remember, that's despite Trump's multiple admissions to Bob Woodward that he knew all along that the scientists were right about how lethal the pandemic was, and that he was downplaying it on purpose. But ultimately, even Donald Trump's political strategy failed. America voted against the empathy void, against the misinformation on the topic of a deadly pandemic, and against the prioritization of politics over public safety. And today, just a few minutes ago, the successor they chose offered a vastly different outlook. President-elect Joe Biden, in remarks to the nation, confronting those twin coronavirus crises where they meet and appealing directly to Congress for much-needed COVID relief before the end of the year.
The folks out there aren't looking for a handout. They just need help. They're in trouble through no fault of their own. Nothing they did caused them to have hours cut or lose their job or drop out of the market. What they need us to understand. We're in a crisis. We need to come together as a nation. We need the Congress to act and act now. Put yourselves in that position, anybody listening. Laying awake at night wondering what's going to happen tomorrow. All of this weakens our ability to control the virus if we don't step up now. Emergency paid leave reduces the spread of COVID because it allows people to stay home when they're sick. States and cities need funding to direct their COVID response, which is the only way we're going to end the economic crisis as well. The sooner we pass the funding, the sooner we can turn the corner on COVID-19.
The country out of the economic despair comes on the heels of a plan complete with specifics to bring the exploding levels of sickness, hospitalization, and death to an end.
Look, we met with governors, Democrat and Republican, as well as 50 Democrat and Republican mayors. And they said they need guidance. They need guidance. And they're going to need a fair amount of money. It's one thing for us to talk about being able to get help out there, but it's not getting there. We're having these hospital stays are overwhelming hospitals right now. There's a need for more financial assistance. There's more financial assistance needed as well when the vaccine comes forward. There's need for planning. On the first day I'm inaugurated to say I'm going to ask the public for 100 days to mask. Just 100 days to mask. Not forever, 100 days. And I think we'll see a significant reduction if that occurs with vaccinations and masking to drive down the numbers considerably.
The president-elect stepping into the leadership void 47 days before he's set to take office is where we start today with some of our favorite reporters and friends. Jason Johnson, professor of journalism and politics at Morgan State University's back. Jason's also a contributor to The Griot. Also joining us, NBC News correspondent Heidi Presbella. And Steve Ratner's here, contributing opinion writer to The New York Times, former counselor to the Secretary of the Treasury, who headed up the Obama administration's auto task force. Hans Nichols is also back, political reporter for Axios, a dream team to do justice to not just the two crises facing the country, but Joe Biden really stepping into an empty stage. Donald Trump could be out there trying to solve the country's economic problems and the pandemic. He's chosen not to. Take me through, Steve Ratner, the economic reality of not just today's jobs report, but where we're heading in the coming weeks.
The economic reality, Nicole, is really tough. And as you suggest, it's not just today's jobs report. We can start with that. It came in significantly lighter than what we expected. It showed a continuing slowdown in the number of new jobs we're adding every month, just 245,000 this past month. At this rate, it would take us something like 3.5 years just to get back to where we were before the pandemic started in terms of number of jobs. You've also had people dropping out of the labor force, which is never a good sign. But as you suggest, it is not just this jobs report. There have been quite a number of signs of economic slowdown, whether you look at what we call real-time data, like how many people are making restaurant reservations through OpenTable, how many people are using Google Maps or Apple Maps for mobility directions, all of this credit card spending, the Black Friday results, auto sales last month. I could keep going. There have been certainly numbers that have gone the other way, but all in all, it feels like an economy that is stalling out, and for no good reason. This is the ultimate case of economic policy malpractice, that you go back to May when the House passed the HEROES Act, passed another bill in October, and here we are now in December still without any kind of relief in sight.
Steve, how important is it that Joe Biden place enough political pressure on Congress to pass relief before he's sworn in? He seems to have made the assessment that things will be exponentially worse if he has to wait to start leading the country's economic policy until he's inaugurated.
This is a judgment every president-elect has to make. Barack Obama had to make it in 2008-9. I was on the team for that. And every president makes their own, president-elect makes their own decisions. I think this president-elect, I think, is right to put his foot on the accelerator, because every week that goes by, every month that goes by, is simply more people in economic distress, both immediate economic distress and long-term economic distress. President-elect Biden has pointed out that when people lose a job, it's often harder for them to get back in the labor force to find another job, and so there's can be permanent destruction. But you have a problem right now, which is principally the Senate, which, as you know, a significant number of Republicans have essentially said they won't vote for any kind of relief. And so the whole thing has been stalled now for weeks and months while Mitch McConnell tries to corral enough senators in his party to get behind something.
Jason Johnson, listening to the president-elect, listening to Steve Ratner just now, it is remarkable the mess that Donald Trump is leaving for President-elect Biden and Vice President-elect Harris. And in terms of a pandemic arriving in this country, clearly that's nobody's fault. But that was one day. It was here. He was told about it. Everything he's done since that day has made it worse. And I wonder what you think his intention is for his final 40 days. Do you think he's intent on trying to shore up an economy so he has bragging rights on something that he leaves intact? Or do you think he is just checked out on both the economic front and the pandemic?
Nicole, this is the cash out moment. This is the smash and grab. Take a look at some of the people who've been appointed to different positions in the last 40 days of this administration. People are trying to get access to high security information that they can sell as consultants or agents on their own when they leave. Donald Trump does not care. He is not actively involved. He is not pushing for any policy because, as far as he's concerned, America rejected him, and he's going to reject America back. So many things that he has not done have been exacerbated by his terrible behavior as of late. And Nicole, this is the other thing that I think is important, and it falls squarely on the shoulders of President Trump, who doesn't care who's checked out, and also Mitch McConnell. In addition to the bad economy, in addition to the number of people being sick, we have millions of people who will be evicted by the end of this month when federal programs and state programs and rent relief programs end. These will be people who on January 1st have no place to live. They will be out on the streets, making it more difficult to have people shelter in place. It's really hard to shelter in place when you're looking for a homeless shelter, or you're living in your car, or you're bouncing from place to place. And all of these things fall squarely on the shoulder of a president who's decided for the last 47 days he doesn't care because he's mad at America because they didn't want to vote for him anymore.
Yeah, and Hans Nichols, if you look at the trajectory that this country has been on since Election Day, everything has grown exponentially worse. The virus is spiraling out of control. 2,800 Americans died yesterday, which was more than the 2,700 and something that died the day before. And other than, I think Mitt Romney went to a microphone, found his way to a microphone and called it an American tragedy, everyone is AWOL. I mean, the president has gone, I don't know, to Facebook. Rudy's still in court. The vice president is nowhere to be seen. Mitch McConnell, other than threatening to shut down some of the nominees for president he hasn't acknowledged actually won. I mean, the entire vacuum of leadership, not just policy leadership around the stimulus and around the jobs report, but moral leadership around the scope and the breadth of the loss is really unprecedented.
We are definitely in a different time. And I think one thing that sort of really revealed that today was the question that was asked twice to Joe Biden, and that is, have you spoken to Mitch McConnell? And neither time did we get a clear answer from Joe Biden. So, yes, there is a vacuum. There are conversations that may or may not be taking place. But the promise that Biden is offering is that he said, he's straight as an arrow, and he's going to be able to cut deals with Mitch McConnell to get money coursing out through the economy. What we saw today from Joe Biden, Nicole, was really the first time he's really fully embraced the idea of trying to put public pressure on Republicans.
Yeah.
And that's going to be the strategy for the next 2 months. But, you know, as to sort of this larger exponential point, that terrifies people inside of Biden's world, especially the economic advisors, because every day that you don't act, and as Jason mentioned, there's a huge concern about evictions, it's going to mean you're going to have to spend more in 2021. And it's not a dollar-for-dollar comparison. It is exponential, and that concerns them.
Heidi, I want to play a little bit more of President-elect Biden from this event that just wrapped up. We'll talk about it on the other side.
It was diminishing confidence across the board and the American people overall, but particularly in this administration with the African-American Latino community. What I heard from my friends in the community, not but blocks from here as we stand, is that we're not going to be the guinea pigs. We're not going to be the guinea pigs. Well, the fact of the matter is that they won't be. You're going to see tens of millions of Americans taking the vaccine, and you're going to see the President of the United States and 3 of the 4 living former presidents doing it publicly as well. It's all about, and look, it's going to take some effort to rebuild confidence in science because it's been so diminished in this administration thus far.
I mean, Heidi, that may be the understatement of all understatements, but I've talked to Robert Gibbs about a normal transition, and not that President-elect or President Obama's transition after George W. Bush's presidency was normal, because that was in the middle of an historic economic crisis. But the idea that before he's even inaugurated, President-elect Biden is out there trying to undo all the damage that has been done by Donald Trump in the hour of this country's gravest public health crisis is remarkable, and that he is taking this offer from former presidents. In no universe could you imagine Donald Trump having an event with every former living president where they all got their vaccines. I mean, it's encouraging, and it's a good sign of the changes that are to come, but it is staggering to think of how far behind we have become in the fight against the pandemic.
So Steve talked about the economic effects. Let me walk you through the effects of the lack of planning when it comes to the vaccine distribution. I have a new report out today showing that while the Trump administration has put significant effort into the portion of this that will fall on their watch, which is phase one, administering to healthcare workers through hospitals and to the elderly in nursing homes through clinics like Walgreens and CVS. Once we get to phase two, which, by the way, is coming straight at us as early as February, where we have to distribute this to the broader population, those African-American individuals that Joe Biden is talking about, they're just one example of all of the hurdles that we're going to have here because specifically of the lack of planning. Nicole, you talk about comparisons to how we prepared for previous pandemics that we thought might spiral out of control, like H1N1, where the government, the Obama administration at the time, planned a massive PR campaign. They got behind heavy grants to the states. They had a summit where they brought together all of the stakeholders, state, local, governors, federal, war-gamed things and worked out the kinks in the system. Here we have things that should have been done 9 months ago when we knew that when we have a vaccine, we actually have to administer it, that haven't been done, chiefly in an IT system here that goes beyond just distribution. Right now, we have doorstep delivery of the vaccine and not much after that, Nicole. And you have two things here, right? You have administering it and being able to track it to make sure that we are actually reaching those high-risk communities. Otherwise, it does no good. And we don't have the IT infrastructure system for that right now. And then secondly, the public confidence piece of it. Once you get into those communities, convincing these people, hey, you need to do this. And by the way, you might get some side effects after you take it. You still got to come back for the second dose, and tracking those people when you have multiple administrators and potentially multiple vaccines. Again, I cannot overstate the lack of preparation that's been done when it comes to having any kind of a system where everybody who is involved in this, all of the stakeholders, can actually be collaborating together. And then again, of course, that critical public relations, public awareness campaign, which state and local officials tell me, we have heard nothing yet from the administration. We're not aware of a plan. Michael Caputo had, look, the former HHS spokesman had wanted to do something where Santa gets vaccinated and roll that out as like a way to show people, hey, it's okay. And that went up in flames when it was found out that they were misusing the money, Nicole.
Jason, I want to ask you about this comment that Joe Biden made, and I wonder if is this the best way to address this skepticism? And there's skepticism about vaccinations from all sorts of pockets, really spanning the ideological spectrum in this country. And Dr. Peter Hotez and other people who work on vaccines have been worried about this moment since the beginning of the outbreak, not just the need to create a vaccine, but to get people to take it. It seems that if people don't take not just the first dose, but the second, it's for naught. I mean, all that has been studied and proven effective is the 2 doses. What is the answer to overcoming that skepticism? And I think it goes without saying that some of the communities that are most skeptical are most vulnerable.
Yeah, I mean, Nicole, lots of black folks are skeptical. Now, I'm not saying everybody, but I'm saying the Tuskegee experiments and things with Norplant that happen in cities of Baltimore, there are legitimate reasons that people in the black community and other communities are concerned about a massive rollout. I can speak anecdotally to plenty of very educated people who I know who are like, yeah, get back to me on the second or third round because we're not going to be experimented on first. You can't just face that skepticism by having Barack and Michelle Obama, do something like Elvis in the 60s and say, hey, look, we're getting a vaccine. That's not going to be enough because the people who believe and the people who want to get this vaccine, they're going to go out and get it. I say, let's take a look at what's happened over the last year with voting, the difficulty in getting driver's license, the difficulty people have had in getting access to laptops and iPads and things like that for virtual education. There is a distribution issue. So even after you overcome the skepticism, you will have to logistically make this possible. And the only way that Joe Biden can do that, and the only way that he can overcome that skepticism is you've got to have local people involved. You've got to have local mayors. You have to put together basically an entire public health force that's going to go in communities, knock on doors and say, look, I'm not even here to give you the vaccine. I'm here to tell you about the vaccine. There will be somebody else coming in 2 weeks and somebody else coming in 2 weeks after that. It has got to be a long and continuous public health message and process. And if they try to do this piecemeal, if they try to just do spots here and there, it will not have enough of a grand effect to actually protect people. And I don't know if Joe Biden realizes that yet. But making simple suggestions like we're just going to have this distributor 100-day of masks, that's not going to be enough. You need an entire force of people similar to the census or the IRS to get this out there to skeptical communities and to make sure it's effective.
Steve Ratner, if you take Heidi's reporting about the fact that basically everything Jason Johnson just described has not happened, and the reality that we're really not protected until the vaccine is administered and administered properly, which in terms of the ones that we know about means 2 doses. How central is the vaccination of large numbers of Americans to our ability to come back economically?
Oh, it's absolutely essential. When you look at the numbers, it's something like, I think, 15% of Americans who work in offices are actually going to those offices at the moment. We're all working remotely. I'm of the school of thought, maybe it's old school, but I think most of my colleagues, even younger ones, would agree. Working remotely isn't the same thing as actually being in an office, not as productive, being able to see your colleagues and get more stuff done. And so being in this state of semi-lockdown, working from home, whatever you want to call it, is absolutely economically a huge problem. You've got huge swaths of the economy, whether it's travel, hospitality, leisure, entertainment, that are still shut down and will be shut down until there's a vaccine. And so that last 10, 15, 20% of the economy won't come back until people are vaccinated, feel safe, feel good about getting together in groups. A lot of small business owners, the restaurant industry, and so on. And so there's certainly more we could be doing now, as we talked about, and should be doing now as a kind of bridge. But it is a bridge. It is not a permanent solution. Vaccination and solving the public health crisis is the only way to get this economy back to where it should be.
Heidi Presbella, thank you for your reporting on this. Steve Ratner, thank you for spending some time with us today. It's great to see you. And Hans Nichols, thank you for your reporting and for starting us off this hour. Jason's sticking around. When we come back, Trump from the beginning did the unthinkable, separating a country under attack from a deadly virus into us and them, claiming that if we excluded the blue states,